Controlling, the net is empty, he throws it down, and in! He scored the goal! Martin Brodeur!
The hockey gods are Red Wing fans too, it appears. The Lightning have done it! They have done it! They have gone back to back!
Unbelievable.
Welcome to Shut Your Five Hole and Listen, your not-so-average hockey podcast. I'm Muffy, your resident Detroit Red Wings fan.
And I am Stephanie, and I am your not-so-average Jersey girl. And yes, I am a Devils fan.
And your Devils made the playoffs this year.
They did. I'm so proud of those boys. And I'm so proud of the Hughes brothers. Little Luke.
Yes,
Got a
little
first
Luke.
goal in overtime. Oh my God, those little teeny tiny baby brothers.
So good. So good. Well, today we are talking all things playoffs. It is Monday, April 17th at time of recording, and it is the first day of the playoffs. So we know we will be partway through the playoffs by the time you are hearing this, but we're going to break down everything and talk about the greatest playoff series in sports.
It really is. It truly is the most wonderful time of year. Some say that's Christmas. I say that's the NHL
It sure
playoffs.
is. I'm with you on that one.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the last game of the season that you went to?
Yeah, so my Detroit Red Wings were here in Tampa playing the Lightning, and it was not a good game for the Wings. It was not. They started out real strong in the first period. They were shooting the puck. They were putting the pressure on, and then all of a sudden, Tampa came back and put the pressure on, and they ended up losing to the Lightning 5-0.
Not good for the Red Wings, but I am not going to lie. I'm happy that the Lightning are scoring some goals before going to the playoffs.
Yes. And it was a game that, it didn't mean anything for either team. The Lightning were already in the playoffs. The Red Wings weren't fighting to get into the playoffs. So it was just kind of everybody playing some hockey. You didn't really get the fighting or the chippiness that you can sometimes get, especially between those two teams. But all in all, it was a great way for the Lightning to end their season. Not a great way for the Red Wings to win their season. But what can you do?
What can you do? So we got a little bit of non-playoff news before we jump into all things playoffs. Muffy, can you tell us something that really exciting that happened for women's hockey?
I sure can. The U.S. women's team won the World Championship over Canada this year. And it's very exciting because the Canadian women's team have been on quite a hot streak, winning the World Championships the last couple of times, winning the Olympics last time around. So the fact that the U.S. broke that streak is very exciting.
Yeah, Canada's been really dominant over the past couple of years, so it's nice to see the U.S. women's team come back, and our girl Hillary Knight got a hat trick.
Yes, she did.
And that helped us as Americans secure the World Championship. And it's great to see, because we talk a lot about Sarah Nurse, and don't get me wrong, we love Sarah Nurse.
But we love Hillary Knight, too.
But we do also love Hillary Knight. And, we were talking a little bit before we were recording about how nice it is to see other teams to start to have female players that are of amazing caliber, and that the U.S. and Canadian women's team just are inspiring a lot of women and a lot of young athletes to go out there and play for their countries, play for their teams. And we're going to see a lot out of women's hockey all over the world in the next couple of years.
I think so, too. It'll be very exciting.
So we have now news that is playoff related, because it's in the playoffs, and then because the off-season firings started very, very quickly.
They did. The Penguins fired their general manager and their director of hockey operations the day after the regular season ended, and the Penguins did not make the playoffs this year. First time since 2006, I believe. And what I find interesting with this is that the general manager and the director of hockey operations were hired in February of 2021, and they were given, according to Yahoo Sports, they were asked to find a way to prop open the championship window for stars Crosby, Malkin, and Letang without sacrificing the club's long-term future. Be like, we know we're going to need to rebuild, but we still want to win the Stanley Cup because you're just going to fall in the middle somewhere.
Yeah. And they hired 2 schmucks to try to do this. I mean, Ron Hextall's a legend. You know, like, they kind of gave them an impossible task. They set them up to
Pretty
fail.
much.
They were like, we have these superstars. We want them to stay superstars, even though they're starting to come into the second half of their career.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to let any of them go, so we're not going to give you any space in your cap to try to get anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But you still have to win the Stanley Cup. That is not showing that you have confidence in the people that you hired. And then when that doesn't happen, and it's the first time that they haven't made the playoffs in over a decade, you let them go immediately.
Yep.
That's not how you build.
It is not. And the Fenway Sports Group, who owns them, basically said, we believe in our core group of players and the goal of contending for the Stanley Cup has not changed. Well, at some point, every team has to go through a rebuild. And when you're starting to trick down in the standings and, like, you know it's coming. The Red Wings crawled into the playoffs the last 4 years that they were in it before their rebuild started. We all knew it was coming.
I mean, the Devils have been shit, really, until this year. And they had a season last year like the Red Wings are having this year, but that took a long time. They won 3 cups real close together. And then it took almost as long as the Penguins have been in the playoffs for the Devils to rebuild back to the point where they are, quite frankly, they could be a Stanley Cup contender. And that takes time. That takes trust, because they could have fired Lindy Ruff last year and they didn't. I mean, we wanted to fire him after the first 2 games of the season, but I'm really glad we didn't. Like, you have to have trust.
Yeah.
Happened with the Lightning. Remember that one year that we shit the bed in the playoffs? And
Yeah, the year we don't talk about.
you know, they didn't fire everybody, but they did. Yeah, the year we don't talk about, but they did get us a puppy.
That is
year.
true. Oh, Bolt.
Oh, Bolt. It's just, if you believe in your players, you're not showing your players that you are setting up
And again,
them for success by having a management team in place that you trust to manage their well-being.
and Ron Hextall should have been one of those people you trust. Like, I can see him being an all-star GM, but you were right. They were set up to fail, and he was not given a proper chance. And I think you could have had a really solid Penguins team in 5-6 years if you gave him the chance to run with it.
And you could still have Crosby on your team. I think that's the other thing, too, that's pretty short-sighted. When there is a core group of people that you want to keep together, sometimes you have to make hard choices. Sometimes you have to let some of these people spread their wings and go other places. I mean, quite frankly, I think the biggest mistake that Pittsburgh made was not this year. It was when they let Fleury go. Because since that happened, this team has not been the same.
It's true.
Because you lost an outstanding goaltender and you lost leadership.
Yep, and they thought the future was Matt Murray, and Marc-Andre Fleury's in the playoffs this year.
Yep. So the firings have begun.
Yes, yes. But let's move on to some happier.
Happy news. Happy news.
The Seattle Kraken, in their second year in the league, have made the playoffs.
They kind of made fetch happen.
They made fetch happen.
Not only did they make the playoffs, they had the most improved record of any NHL expansion team. So from the first season to their second season, the amount of points they gained was the most in NHL history. It's a fun stat, but I also feel it's a little, I don't know the right word, but it's funny to me because it's like, by all accounts, Vegas is still the best all-time expansion team because they were so good out the gate.
Made it to the final.
You couldn't even think of
in
them
their
that
first
way.
season. Yeah.
So, like, you know, it's a little different, but that is still a cool stat. I'm happy for the Seattle fans. I'm happy that they're getting a franchise that I think they wanted, that they deserved, even with all the hokey stuff they're doing. They earned that spot, and we'll see how it goes.
And then in Vegas Golden Knights news, Mark Stone is coming off of long-term injury reserve after having a back injury and back surgery. And I have already seen all over the Twitter today that people are calling this the, Tampa Bay Nikita Kucherov scenario of when the Lightning won the Cup in 2020 and how Kucherov had been out basically the whole season and came back for the playoffs. And here it goes again with Mark Stone.
I will say, though, I feel like it's a little different when you're a goalie versus a winger.
You mean a defenseman?
A defenseman, sorry. I was still thinking about Marc-Andre Fleury, and my dog was crying, so I just said goalie. I don't know. I think, to me, it's not apples to apples. Mark Stone is good, but he is no Nikita Kucherov.
No, I think it's more people are talking about this is quote unquote circumnavigating the salary cap when it's not, when both players were actually injured. And I mean, Stone had back surgery in like January or February. The fact that he's going to be playing now, I think, is pretty miraculous. Like, you don't typically come back from back surgery to play in the NHL that quickly.
No, that is very true.
No.
But I don't know.
Say what you want about the cap rules,
different.
But all bets are off when you come to the playoffs.
It's all within the rules. I still have not forgiven Dougie Hamilton for his comments when he was on the Carolina Hurricanes about that, even though he is on my precious, precious New Jersey Devils now. It's just, I feel like you're a sore loser if you talk about it.
Yeah. It is kind of true. But we'll see how Vegas does now that Mark Stone is back. Because sometimes that can throw things off, too. You haven't been playing with him, and now you're going to be. Maybe that throws off some of the chemistry that's happened. We just don't know.
Yeah, we will see.
Yes.
And that brings us to the end of period 1. And we're back. And this time we're going to tell you how the playoffs work.
Yes. So, throughout the regular season, the teams receive points for games won, no points for games lost, and a single point for overtime loss or a shootout loss. So 2 points for a win, 1 for a loss in overtime or a shootout, 0 points if you lose in regulation. And all those points get added together to determine where the teams land in the standings and who will be the top 16 teams going to the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yes. And there are 32 teams, so you would think that would make things a little less complicated in the standings, but no. Because,
back
what
when
happens in the playoffs is we have a wild card situation.
We do, because that was back when we had an odd number of teams, and the NHL instituted this wild card situation for 31 teams. Despite the fact we are now at 32, they have not gone back to a 1 through 8 seeding. We have the wild card. So, Stephanie, please explain.
Yes. So, back in the day, as Muffy was saying, it was a 1 through 8 seeding. Where you landed in your conference, if you were 1 through 8, if you were 1, you played 8. If you were 2, you played 7. No longer. Now we have a system where we have the wild card.
Ooh.
So what happens is it's less based on your conference and more based on your division for the top 3 spots in each division. So using the Metropolitan Division as an example, the top 3 teams in that division this year are number 1, Carolina, number 2, New Jersey, number 3, New York Rangers. Had to say the Rangers because, yes, there are 3 teams in New York. And what happens after that is, so you've got 2 divisions per conference. So Metropolitan has 3, Atlantic has 3, Central has 3, and Pacific has 3. So you got your 1 through 6, right? So then that's still 2 spots. 2 spots that are left. This is where the wild card comes into play. And this is where your overall standings in the conference come into play, because you could have 2 teams from the same conference get that 7 and 8 spot. So how does that all come out and who plays who? Well, now we go back to the conference. So if you are number 1 in the conference, such as the Boston Bruins are this year, you play the second wild card spot, which this year is the Florida Panthers. If you are number 2 in your, now go with me on this journey, your division, you play the 3rd seed in your division. So in this scenario, the Lightning and the Toronto Maple Leafs are playing each other again. I reversed their spots. Sorry about that. It's the Maple Leafs are 2, the Lightning are 3. Now we go back to our wild card. So the Carolina Hurricanes, because they are the top of their division but have fewer points than the Boston Bruins, they play the first wild card, which is the number 7 spot formally.
Yes.
I know that's very complicated and convoluted when you say it out loud, but to make it easy for yourself, if you go look at the NHL standings and you look at it, they actually have a wild card one. If you look at, it'll break it out by division and then it'll show you where all the other teams play in the wild card. All you really have to remember is the team that has the most points in either division in a conference, that plays the number 2 spot. So that means they have the fewest points of the playoffs teams. And then the team at the top of the other division, who will have less points than that, whoever is usually the top of the conference, they will play the first. And then the other 2 teams battle it out in the division. Super convoluted. That's why we're like, I don't know why you don't go back to 1 through 7.
Through 8.
But I guess they feel it makes for more drama, and sports is nothing if not theater.
It is true. And the other thing that might help is because we are at the playoffs now, you can go and look at the actual playoff bracket and it will break down who is playing who, and you can see how that will feed in. And we will talk about brackets in our 3rd period today.
Yes, we will. The other thing when you're going to look at those standings, in addition to the points that you want to look at, is also the wins, losses, because sometimes that plays into how many points a team has.
Yes.
But it gives you information on, when those matchups come, because they can be kind of funny. Like who might have the edge if you're, and then you can go deeper, and they don't really have it on there. You can they do have it. How many of you won at home versus how many of you won away? So the Lightning are usually always better away in the playoffs for some reason than they are at home. You can get real into it, but all you got to remember is look at those standings, look at the wins, losses, and look at the points. Everything else you can figure out later. Before we go to the 3rd.
I was going to say, when we get to the actual games happening, they are best of 7 series. So you have to win 4 games to move on to the next round of the playoffs, and you have a potential of 7 games to do so. So a team could sweep, which means they win it in 4. They could win in 5, 6, or it could go to what most people consider the most exciting part of the Stanley Cup playoffs, a Game 7, the do or die situation.
Because at that point, it's sudden death.
And the other thing to know about the playoffs is it really is sudden death the entire time. If it is tied after 3 periods, you play 20-minute 5-on-5 overtime, period after period, until somebody scores. It is not like the regular season where we talked about 3-on-3 in the shootout. This goes on and on and on until somebody scores. And I remember being up till all hours of the night in 2008 when the Wings were about to win the cup in Game 5. The Penguins scored with just seconds left, and it went for, I believe, 3 more periods before anyone scored. It was almost 2 full hockey games before someone scored.
Yeah. I don't know. The internet could probably tell me this. Don't the Red Wings still hold the record for the longest
I think it's actually Montreal, back in the 40s. I think the Wings came close to that one, but I believe Montreal in the early days have a longer one.
We'll fact check that, but that also just goes to show you some of these teams, man, they've been around forever. The other thing that's fun that you should think about with these standings overall is the team, no matter what conference they are in, that has the most points at the end of the regular season wins what is known as the President's Trophy. And there's all sorts of lore and rumor and suspicion around whether or not you touch it. Because if you touch it, apparently that is a bad omen, and then you will not win the Stanley Cup.
But we've seen that proven
the
wrong.
President's Trophy is sort of...
Well, we see it more proven with the Eastern and Western Conference trophies, I guess, more so than the President's Cup.
I don't know. The President's Cup trophy to me is still the
It
kiss
is.
of death.
It is.
That said, Boston this year is fucking fire.
It's going to be interesting. Also, before we move on, I did Google, and you are correct. Detroit does hold the longest game. It is against Montreal in the 1930s, 1936.
So we're both right.
In a way. So
that is how the playoffs work. They are fun.
it is literally the
Yes,
best
the
time
standings are...
to watch hockey. So if you are just starting to listen to our podcast and learn, this is the time you want to be watching the game for sure.
Because anything could happen. Like, literally anything could happen. You want drama? Watch hockey. Stanley Cup playoffs, man. Crazy things happen. Okay, we're back. Now that we've talked to you about how the playoffs work, we're those crazy people who have made a bracket.
And I can tell you every year my bracket goes to hell in a handbasket. But I tried to apply some logic to it this year. But, you know, it's the playoffs. Anything can happen. So it's probably not going to work out in my favor either. I probably should have just hit that random picks button and see what happens.
Yeah, it's nuts. So, shall we start with the Eastern Conference?
Sure.
Okay. So, Muffy, who do you have winning between the President Trophy winning Boston Bruins and the wild card Florida Panthers?
I have the Brew Crew in 5.
Oh, I have them in 6.
So here, I feel like even though in our last episode I talked about how there's been an interesting sort of pattern with like the President's Cup trophy winner from the year before winning the Stanley Cup the next year, don't see that happening this year. While the Panthers did play very well last year, they are not the same team this year, and they were definitely fighting their way into that last wild card spot. And as we've said, Boston has been on fire this year. They broke the record for most games won. They broke points records. They've been off the charts. That I don't see a way the Panthers get out of the first round.
Yeah, I don't either. And then for purely personal reasons, I would like the Bruins to just crush them because the Panthers couldn't do me a solid and beat the Hurricanes. So that the Devils, when, you know, Luke Hughes got his first goal in that overtime win, now they have to play the Rangers.
Yeah.
That's going to be brutal. It's going to be fun to watch, though. So speaking of which, who do you got? Devils, Rangers.
I hate to do this to you, Stephanie, but I picked Rangers in 7. And mainly because they fought so hard last year in the playoffs, I see them coming fully with a vengeance to try and get back to that spot. And with it being the first year in a while that the Devils have made it to the playoffs, I feel like the Rangers have a slight edge. But I think it's going to go to 7 games. I think it's going to be a really hard-fought series.
I have Devils in 6. 1, because I can't not pick them. But 2, there is a certain degree to this Devils team that they are so young. They are like so young they don't know that they're not supposed to win. So there is something to be said for that. And I will also say they have an incredible asset in Andre Palat. And I'm not just saying this because he has been on the Lightning, but because he has so much cup experience. He's a great person to have in there. And even though I badmouthed him before, Dougie Hamilton also has a ton of playoff experience. So I think they have some older guys that root them, that can bring them through. But these young kids, they just don't know that they're not supposed to like just pull it out of their ass, because they just keep pulling it out of their ass. So I hope they have that fire. I hope they have that spirit. But it is going to be dirty, and not just because it's these two teams this year, but because of all of the history between New York, New Jersey. You also have to remember the Devils are the only national sports team that the state has left that is a New Jersey team, even though both football teams play in New Jersey. They're New York Giants and Jets. So, you never count out
No.
Jersey.
And
don't count
I hope
us
I am
out.
wrong and that your Devils totally win.
But if I see Mackenzie Blackwood in between those pipes, I'm going to scream. That's the other thing. Shesterkin is
He
sick.
is.
And get ready, everyone, for just massive amounts of me on the Instagram, just typing out in my stories, fucking Zibanejad.
Yes, I get those text messages a lot. World, you're going to get them too. All right.
So,
who do you have for the
other-
Carolina Hurricanes New York Islanders matchup?
I have Canes
That's
at 5.
exactly what I have too.
I just don't think the Islanders have it. Even though they are that first wild card spot, they just don't seem to have that spark this year.
No.
So, sorry.
All right.
Prove us wrong.
The matchup that we
Third year in a row.
are
Fourth
very
year?
invested
Third or fourth
in.
year?
The Toronto Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Who you got?
How many years in a row has this been?
I think
3 or
it's
4?
3.
It's either way, statistically, Toronto should win.
Well, I thought that last year, and I had the Lightning out in the first round, and they went on to the Cup final. So, like I said, bracket went to hell in a handbasket. This year, I have decided that the Lightning have done it year after year. I'm going in on the Lightning this time.
See, and I'm going Toronto in 7. I'm going with statistics.
I put 7 for both of them as well.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a hard one too, because I think that the Lightning just have a lot to prove, because they haven't been the best this year. They've been good, but they have not been the Lightning that everybody knows. But then again, you are right. The Lightning love to be the underdog. So,
all right, shall we talk West Coast or Western Conference?
West Coast.
The defending Stanley Cup champions of the Colorado Avalanche and the little baby Seattle Kraken. Who you got?
Similarly to my reasoning with the New Jersey Devils, I just feel like the Kraken just don't know they're not supposed to keep winning. So I picked Seattle.
I love
in
it.
6.
I love it. I did not. I picked Colorado in 5 because I don't feel like you can count out the defending champs that early. And again, Seattle doesn't have the playoff experience that many of the Colorado Avalanche players have. But again, I would be pleasantly surprised to see the Kraken pull it out.
Yeah. I mean, this might be where my bracket goes to hell in a handbasket, but I just want that so bad. So, Edmonton, LA. Who do you got?
I picked Edmonton in 6. I really wanted to pick LA for a other purpose in my bracket of a dream scenario I would like to happen, but I feel like Edmonton's gonna come out real hard this year.
I picked Edmonton because they're going to come out hard. They've got that guy that's really good.
That McDavid kid, you might have heard of him.
That Connor McDavid. I don't know if you've heard of him. And I just could not pick LA because of what they did to Quick.
I know. They did him dirty.
They did him so dirty. So I could not go there.
But that brings us to the Vegas Golden Knights, where Jonathan Quick went to, and the Winnipeg Jets. Who do you have in that series?
Well, in the similar vein of fuck the LA Kings, I picked Vegas in 6.
I did Vegas in 5, and this is part of the reason why I wanted to pick LA in the last round, was because I would love to have a Vegas-LA round and have Vegas just slaughter LA. But I do think Edmonton will take care of that in the first round, and they won't even make it to the second.
Yeah, I agree. So what do you got for Dallas and Minnesota Wild with our boy Marc-Andre Fleury?
I picked Dallas in 7. And again, I would have really liked to pick the Wild, but Dallas was heating up at the end of the season. I think they're going to carry that through the playoffs.
I did Dallas in 5, and I agree. It's because of how they finished out that season. They got really hot pretty fast and consistent. They became consistent at the end of the year in the way that I don't know if they really had been the rest of the year. Like after that All-Star break, they just started getting momentum, and it just hasn't stopped.
All right, so obviously we have some discrepancies going into the next few rounds.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go through those, or do you want to just jump to who you have winning?
Let's just jump to who we have winning.
All right.
Who's
My
your
matchup is the Oilers versus the Rangers.
Ooh. Mine is the Knights versus the Devils.
I like it. I did have the Knights there at first, and then I switched because, again, I was like, there is something about that Edmonton team this year that I feel like...
No, they're good. This is just a total dream scenario because the way I did this, I also have Boston going to the conference finals. And I'm not going to lie, if I have in a logical manner, have a hard time seeing who's going to pick Boston.
Mm-hmm.
This is my heart bracket.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I need to do like a logic bracket.
That's all right. It's all right. Yes, I have Boston going to the conference finals too. But again, like I said earlier, with New York getting a taste for it last year, I can see that being what pushes them all the way.
Yeah, I just can't pick.
I know you can't because they suck.
Just can't. They suck. Just like that Potvin, which I'll explain that one day.
Yeah. All right.
So that's that. Maybe after the first round, we can do a bracket.
I like it.
Recap on the pot. Yeah. So that will be fun. We'll keep that up for you.
And we'll break down what we think for round 2 when we know who's playing each other.
We will put our bracket link to our league if you want to join us in the show notes. Muffy's been posting it on social, so you can follow us there. And that's the show. Yes,
be sure to follow us on social. Just search for Shut Your Five Hole and Listen on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You will be able to find us. All of our handles are slightly different because somebody decided they were going to create a podcast called Shut Your Five Hole years ago, and they made one episode and never came back, and they stole the handles. So, not helpful, person, not helpful. But you can find us. You can also send us an email at shutyourfiveholepodcast@gmail.com. And we look forward to going through the playoffs with you guys and seeing what crazy things happen.
Yeah, have fun with it because that's what it's supposed to be, is fun. It's cutthroat, but it's fun.
Until next time.
Bye.